Next, we have our keynote speaker, Dr. Ahmed Heikal. And before I introduce Dr. Heikal, I would like to tell you a short story about the first time I heard of Dr. Heikal and of Citadel Capital. It was about 8 years ago, and it was my very first weekend at business school down at Stanford. And one of my classmates said, "Oh, you're from Egypt. You must know Dr. Heikal from Citadel Capital." And I was like, and I actually had not heard of Citadel. It was only 1 year old. And he looked at me and said, "How could you possibly be at business school and not know what Citadel Capital is?" And I was really embarrassed. So I went back, and this was about 2006, 2007. The company was 2 years old, and I really was blown away. And we reached out to Dr. Heikal, and we asked him to come and give a talk at Stanford. He was unable to make it, but Abdullah Al-Ibyari, one of his partners, came. And they gave a talk about Citadel, and they blew everybody away. Because in a time where private equity really meant LBOs, leveraged buyouts, just financial reengineering, here was a firm that really thought about building infrastructure, about transforming a region. And the projects they spoke about, building a whole new transportation system connecting Egypt with East Africa, using the Nile for shipping goods, it literally was just out of this world thinking and imagination. And at the end of his talk, people came to me and said, "Hey, what would it be like to work in Cairo? Is that fun?" And they really changed people's minds. Dr. Heikal founded Citadel in 2004 with total paid-in capital of 2 million Egyptian pounds. Today, the total paid-in capital is about 8 billion Egyptian pounds. They closed the region's largest ever private equity transaction. They have generated returns of 2.2 billion on 650 million of investing. Typically, we say in the Valley, if you can triple $500 million, that's pretty impossible. That's well beyond that metric. Prior to founding Citadel, he was the executive board member and managing director of EFG Hermes, which he joined in 1992 as a partner. There, he literally just grew it from a simple boutique shop into the fastest growing investment bank in the region. He was head of asset management, head of securities, head of investment banking, and head of private equity. Raised 3 rounds of finance for the regional mobile telecoms. He is the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award, honoring his contribution over more than a quarter of a century to the development of business, finance, and investment in the Middle East. He holds a master's degree and a PhD in industrial engineering from Stanford University. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Ahmed Hassanin Heikal.
Well, it's a great privilege to hear this introduction. I don't think I deserve it. So let me now proceed. You may think that I have very little in common with most of you. This is a guy who is a managing director of a large company in a sphere that is a more stable sphere, more brick and mortar type businesses, as opposed to the high-tech environment that you all live in. Nothing further from the truth. We live in an environment that is very similar to your environment. And let me highlight some of the similarities that exists between me and most of you here. First, after finishing my master's and PhD, I went back to Egypt. First thing is, I did not know what I wanted to do. So, people imagine at 31 that you know exactly what you want to do. Not correct. Until the age of 31, I knew nothing about exactly what is it that I wanted to do. I worked for a very small firm called EFG, and it was like lightning. EFG for me, I joined when the firm had a capital of 250,000 pounds. That's $60,000. It had total revenue of around $250,000, just barely making it surviving. When we hired the first 4 important people in the firm, the salaries were 4,000 Egyptian pounds. The chairman of the company at the time called me up in his office, and he said, "Ahmed, 4,000 pounds in 1993 was a very large sum. He said, Ahmed, I don't know what are you doing. I pray to God, I don't understand it. I pray to God that you understand what you're doing. And it paid off. The hiring people and interviewing people. Some of my colleagues here said something about keeping interviewing people. I think it's the most important factor that you can have, is to keep interviewing people well beyond. Today we have 40,000 employees in all our portfolio companies. All the first level and second level people I make it a point of interviewing those people personally. And yes, it takes an enormous amount of time from me, but if you start getting on the wrong track as far as hiring, somebody said, if you hire giants, you get giant companies. The minute a company goes into a downward spiral regarding hiring people who are less efficient, you fall into a trap, and it's very difficult to get out of this trap. So one, I did not found, but I worked in a very small firm. That was the first firm. Grow it up till 11. I left to run a failing private equity deal that I had done. And it was a very large deal. It was $150 million back in 2000. And it was going under. And I said, I will leave EFG to go run this firm. And it was 3 years of miserable hell, as far as I'm concerned, making ends meet as far as salaries of this defunct deal. And it was 3 years of pressures that you could not, really scrambling every end of the month to make the salaries of this company, to pay the salaries. Like you, I view myself as building businesses. I don't view myself as something else. If you look at Citadel, at the core of Citadel is we build businesses. And those build businesses, yes, they may not be technology businesses, but at the end of the day, we build businesses. And sometimes, the mention of the Nile River transport business plus the railway in Africa. Mombasa, we own the Mombasa-Kampala railway line, which for a period of time gave us a lot of heartache and ulcers, but now it's getting up and running, and the turnaround is fantastic. But that's, at the core of it is you need to think of building a business. Honestly speaking, I don't think about money. And money occupy it's very important that you have a minimum stashed away, but I don't think of money. Money will come, but at the end of the day, the first thing is you have to think about doing the right things for your business and building businesses. The third aspect is, believe it or not, I should be considered as the founder of the largest technology business in the Middle East, which is Raya Technology. Although I am not on the official plaque, but I think this is, when you ask Medhat Khalil, who is the chairman of Raya, who helped building this business, he will say Ahmed Heikal. And I was a board member for 6 or 7 years in the first life of the company. Fourth is anybody who lives out of in this part of the world understands that it's the people. Nothing else. Money is important, but it's the people, it's the people, it's the people. So, I share that with all of you. People are what makes companies, not the other way around. Family. Yes, my wife is out there. She suffered. It puts a lot of pressure. I certainly, I'm guilty of not exactly walking the right balance, and sometimes it's very difficult to do. Many of you have one business to worry about. Unfortunately, I have a lot of businesses, and too many to continue on the same path. This is why we recently are making a change in our strategy. Further than that, I strongly believe in giving back. Citadel Capital Scholarship Foundation is a foundation to finance scholarships. So far, we have sent 160 students from around different geographical locations in Egypt, governorates in Egypt, and we've sent them to the best universities. This is the best investment that we can make in the future of our country. Truly, and I make it a point every year to go in the scholarship award ceremony, and for this year it's next week. So I'm flying from here and to Egypt to attend the ceremony. For the person that says, you know, you have to worry about, to put things in perspective regarding family, health, etc. I have suffered cancer 6 years back, and nothing puts things in perspective more than illness. And you get that when you fall ill. And, you know, in the beginning, you know, it's success, it's everything else. But suddenly you get this wake-up call, and this wake-up call is very important to putting things in perspective. And it's nothing puts things in perspective than more than illness. As far as the growing income divide that exists within our societies, nothing will be able to close this income divide without knowledge. And you here, you're the living embodiment of this. Creating companies is knowledge. Technology is knowledge. Knowing how to finance companies is knowledge. Knowing who to tap for money is knowledge. Knowledge is not necessarily, it can be in a variety of ways. It does not necessarily mean technology, but it is in a variety of ways. And the only way for our countries to step up to the plate on a global scale is to build a knowledge-based economy. Now, if I want to move from that into the situation in our country, I will say that I am quite optimistic about what's happening in Egypt. Carefully optimistic. I see, you know, some signs that should not be ignored, but I am very optimistic. And the reason why I'm optimistic is, and those are not words. You know, if you look at Citadel Capital over the last 4 or 5 months, we have raised our capital from 4.3 billion pounds to 8 billion pounds. We have established a new subsidiary in energy, and that is, we raised $530 million of fresh capital on that subsidiary. We have presented the government with an offer to build a new power plant for $1.3 billion. And I personally have increased my stake in Citadel Capital by an incremental 1%. So I own today about 16%, so I raised it to 17%. This is a serious commitment, and if this does not convey optimism about the future, I don't know what will. And it's not, again, it's not, those are not words, those are clear actions that are taking place. So why have I done personally what I have done, or what did the firm do what the firm did? I think it's very important to understand that many other countries before have passed through this predicament. What we saw in Egypt over the last 10, 11 years was, among other things, an energy-induced crisis. The root cause of where we are economically today And I'm saying it's one big cause. I'm not saying that it's the only cause, so that's clearly understood. One important cause is that Egypt began to hide, because of many reasons, it began to hide its energy problems. And some of those reasons are very clear to you. How would we export energy if we are a net importer of energy? So you needed to hide the fact that we are a net importer of energy in Egypt. But at the root cause of where we are today is energy. We were importing energy at, let's say, $1,000 a ton of diesel and selling it at a seventh of that price. Nothing will get you to bankruptcy faster than a subsidy system that is extremely skewed to in the favor of very few people. And I have been very vocal on that for a long period of time. Imagine a situation where you have money and you go up into a helicopter and you throw this money away from the helicopter up there. People would imagine that that's a fair system of distributing the money. But if you know that the land down is owned by a few rich people, then the probability of this money getting into a land that I own, and I am one of the recipients of this, I was one of the recipients of this, you know, then the system is skewed. And it's skewed in a very unfair way. And I have been very vocal about this for the last 10 years. Talking about how this rigged system of subsidies is making us extremely under the country which has enormous financial difficulties. The accumulation of this over a period of time has meant that the level of debt has started to rise, and has started to rise since 2002 as a result of the fact that it's in 2002 is the year where we passed from being a net exporter of oil to a net importer of a net exporter of oil to a net importer of oil. So you had at the same point in time a situation where we were starting to be a net importer of petroleum products, and oil prices have started to peak. As a result, the combined effect of those two things together meant that the subsidy rose from £1 billion in 2002, 2003 to £150 billion last year. So it's a combination of more importation and higher prices. So the multiplying effect of this is what caused this 1 billion to 140 billion. So if one can ask, okay, so what has changed? Okay, why are you now shifting from being, you know, negative in 2004 to positive now? The first step is that you need to recognize that there is a problem. This problem existed for 6 or 7 years prior to President Mubarak. It existed for the following 3 years during the government, a couple of interim governments, plus the government of President Morsi. And then now, I think, is the moment of reckoning. I think everybody understands, among politicians, but more importantly, among the general population, that that cannot last. And facing the problem is the first step. Recognition that there is a problem is the first step. Now, the solutions, how do you solve for that? That's another set of issues. But I think there is a realization now that we cannot continue on the path that we are. That makes me extremely positive. Our back is against the wall. Okay? How can that be positive? We need to make changes. And changes are going to take us to a better situation. So I look at this as part economy, part social, and part politics. So as far as the economy is concerned, you look at the signs. The energy system has started to go down. Look at the increase of natural gas to households. Look at the increase of electricity prices to certain categories of consumers. So that is, we are on this path for a cut in subsidies. Second thing that is positive on the economy is that there is a realization that the currency is too strong. The level of imports of Egypt is about $20 billion a year. This cannot last. The amount of growth of energy consumption has increased substantially at a compounded growth rate of about 7% as a result of this system of subsidy. So you encourage people to make, to invest in industries that are in sectors that are high consumption of energy. That is the wrong paradigm. We should look also at industries where you can employ a lot of people. You don't need only to look at high energy consumer. But if you mispriced energy, that's what happened to you. You invest in the wrong type of energy, in the wrong type of industries. So devaluation today, I think, is important. If you look at the last couple of months, the currency has started to edge up slowly. I remember a month and a half ago, it was 690. Today, it's 720. That's obviously, that has other repercussions that I will touch on very briefly. But that is positive as far as I'm concerned. The other thing is, with this increase, with this devaluation, you're going to get inflationary pressures. And the only way to solve for those inflationary pressures is to do what some of the other very successful countries have done, which is to give conditional cash payment or cash subsidies all the way. So instead of a rigged system whereby the more you consume, the more you're subsidized, you give an equal amount of money for everybody. So if I, for example, get £300 per month as a subsidy and the subsidy is lifted, I disproportionately pay the price. If somebody who gets £600 a month of income gets £300 a month, that's positive as far as he's concerned. So you are rebalancing the economy in this way. Everybody who lives in the States knows that the solution to the US problems is, to budgetary problems, is both an expansion of revenue and a reduction of cost. You can't have one without the other. And that's the fight between the Republicans and the Democrats. In my view, this is what we should have in here in the States. The fight, the Democrats want to increase taxes by and large, obviously with some nuances, and the Republicans want to reduce taxes. One does not want to make entitlement reforms. The other wants fast entitlement reforms, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. In Egypt, it's the same. We need to increase taxes, we need the government to increase revenues, and we need a reduction of cost. Reduction of cost is essentially from the subsidy system, increase of tax. If you're following Egypt, there has been 3 taxes imposed over the last 4 or 5 weeks. There has been a 5% increase in income tax over people who make £1 million and above. There has been the enactment of the taxes on capital gains and taxes on dividends. And third, you have the taxes that have been imposed on ضريبة عقارية. Yeah, okay. So those taxes have been increased. So together with cutting the entitlement of the subsidy system and giving cash subsidy in return, the other thing is you need to obviously raise taxes. Stimulating investment is happening before our eyes. The government cannot invest. That's a simple fact. You have today a budget deficit that is 17, 18%, and you have a debt to GDP of 110%, and you cannot, and the government is borrowing at 11%. Not sustainable. Everybody knows that. It's like any one of you having running a deficit of $2,000 a month, having total debts on their credit cards and on a variety of credit that you take. You've maxed out your credit card, you've maxed out all your borrowing capacity, etc., and you run a $2,000 deficit. Well, that's a recipe for something that cannot continue. It's very important from where I sit to have a level of conflict within society that is way less than where it is today. And in my view, that can only be accomplished by making sure to integrate people, the youth, and people from the Muslim Brotherhood that have not been tainted with taking the law into their own hands, being reintegrated into society. And reintegrated is different from anything else. It's not a musalha. It is getting them reintegrated on new grounds into society. I firmly believe that needs to happen. And I am in a very small minority regarding that, and I recognize that, and I still talk about it. So that's it's very important to integrate, and this is what's happening. All of this are things, in my view, that are happening. Maybe the signs are still small, but in my view, this is where we're going. The decision to integrate the informal economy into the formal economy has to be made. And yes, there are going to be a transition period that is not very, that is tough for everybody involved. I view what happened in the Egyptian Stock Exchange. The Egyptian Stock Exchange, the minute they imposed taxes, fell down 25%. And by no economic model can you justify the fact that a 5% tax on income on capital gains can achieve what we have, the results, 25% reduction in the stock exchange. The only way to see that is via the prism of the stock exchange attracting a lot of people who do not pay taxes and who do not want to file tax returns, and those people have taken their money out of the stock exchange because they don't want to declare profit. So the money that flew out is the culprit. And so people need to understand the impacts, and we will learn a lot of impacts over the next period of time. The Egyptian economy is extremely inefficient. Extremely inefficient. But that is negative, but it's also positive in the sense that you have a lot of low-hanging fruits. And those hanging fruits are there to be taken, and those hanging fruits make for two things. Make for fantastic investment opportunities, but also make for quick gains that the economy can achieve. The new constitution is there. It's a good constitution. We can build on this constitution. And the parliamentary election will be held soon. Those are some of one important reason for my optimism also is that the new regime has a lot of constraints that are imposed on them. And those constraints are relationship with the West, relationship with the Gulf, relationship with Israel, etc. A whole slew of constraints that by the time you look at all of those constraints, the range of policy mistakes that can take place are relatively little. And I say relatively, I'm not saying it cannot happen. The road ahead will not be simple, and there are daunting challenges. And, and it is fraught with many possible headwinds. And tapering from the Federal Reserve is one of the, and pressure on emerging markets is going to be one. Social pressures from latent inflationary pressures in the economy are going to be two. Very high unemployment among university graduates is certainly a very big challenge. The fight for the segregation of mosque and states is going to be a big challenge. And it's a fight that we need to have at this point in time. The West had the separation of church and state 300 years back. Now it's our time to fight the separation between mosque and state. Paralysis and decision-making capability of the top bureaucrats in Egypt and their fear from prosecution is going to be, in my mind, one of the biggest challenges that are going to be faced. I live that every day, and I can write book upon book upon book on this issue. Obviously, the role of the military in the future is something that needs to be carefully managed. Temporary setbacks are going to happen, but that's but for the first time in a really long time, I am really optimistic about how the future looks like. That's it. Thank you.
So the last time, actually, Stanford University asked Dr. Heikal to make all the trip out here to give a talk. He was incredibly busy. But then when TechWadi reached out and said, hey, would you come all the way from Egypt to give a talk? He said, absolutely. Not only did he do that, but he also is a huge soccer fan, and I hear has had to miss at least 6 games to be here with us today. So please join me in thanking Dr. Heikal.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.